Generally, I prefer unfun facts, but it's been a week. As a little treat, I'm going to give you some actually fun facts. Number one, Astroglide was invented by a NASA scientist. I thought the name was just branding, but it turns out it's a reference to the fact that the inventor was an actual rocket scientist. His real name was Dan X-Ray, and he was working on the cooling systems of the space shuttle, and he came up with this liquid that was real slippy and nice. So he went from cooling down systems to heating them up. I'm very sorry. Number two, falcons are more closely related to parrots than to hawks. A study from 2014 of the DNA of a lot of birds found that hawks and owls came down one path, falcons and parrots and songbirds all came down another. That falcons were essentially parrots that were like, I'm done talking, we're going to throw down. Number three, ancient Egyptians invented a pregnancy test where they would pee on a bunch of seeds, and it totally worked. There's a papyrus from 1350 BCE that described this test where one would pee on some wheat and barley, and if they germinated, she was pregnant. Modern scientists have replicated this, and the shocking thing is that it's like 70% accurate, even though it does make your bread taste weird.
I don't know if you know just how weird the song Take Me Out to the Ball Game is. It's not a fun little ditty about a day at the park. The real song is about a radical woman who attacks the power structure and gets what she wants. I wrote about this in my new Fun Fact Friday newsletter, and I'm not usually going to include the stuff from the email on videos, so if you don't get it, you're going to miss out. You probably know Take Me Out to the Ball Game as that moment in the seventh inning when all the members of the baseball cult sing their loyalty pledge. I don't care if I never get back. That is an oath saying that they're forsaking their old lives, willing to die if that's what the gods require. The part we sing is just the chorus of a longer song that came out in 1908, and it was, at the time, The Bee's Knees. It's about Katie Casey, a baseball-obsessed woman, and her boyfriend who just wants to go on normal dates. He's just trying to get to third base, which in 1908 meant rubbing your ankle against her ankle under the table, I assume. She ignores his suggestions and says the only date she'll go on is if he takes her out to the ball game. That whole thing about snacks and being willing to die there, that's Katie talking. But where it gets really interesting is the second verse after they've gone to a game together. She told the umpire he was wrong all along, good and strong. She seems like a hoot by modern standards, but this is 1908, okay? This is an absolute legend. I mentioned in an earlier video that yelling at referees does seem to have an impact on the game. So this is a woman who can't vote. She doesn't have a checking account, but for 9 innings a day, she can show up to the power structure, talk shit to its face, and make a difference. There's also a bonus fact about this song that I didn't mention that is in the newsletter. If you want to sign up, it's free. All I ask in return is unending loyalty and the willingness to never go back to your old life.
As part of my ongoing effort to keep my content balanced and be a little bit more positive, here are 3 more actually fun facts. Number 1, if you're allergic to cats, you're probably also allergic to lions. Scientists found that the same protein that causes an allergic reaction from cat dander is also present in 7 of the 8 big cats they tested. So if kitty cats make you a little sneezy, so will ocelot, puma, serval, Siberian tiger, lion, jaguar, and snow leopard. But the even better news is that they found one species that didn't have the same protein, so if you can't adopt a cat and you really want one, you should try a caracal. Number 2, what company manufactures the most tires in the world? Michelin? Nope, they're second, probably because they had that weird side quest into French cuisine. The largest manufacturers of tires by number of tires is Lego. And it's not even close. Lego makes 100 million tires more than the next most company. We should also give an honorary mention to Firestone. The 707057 SRG is the biggest useful tire in the world, and it's used on the L2350 loader. Number 3, a horse has about 12 horsepower. The original number was based on what a horse could average over a day. Obviously, they could do way more than that if they were like in a pickle or if they were trying to impress a mare that happened to be cantering by, at which point they can peak between 12 and 14 horsepower. But in case any of those horses tend to get cocky, remind them the L2350 can do, as the name suggests, about 2,350 horsepower. Horses have another power though, they can also make people sneezy. That's right, if you're allergic to cats, there's a high chance you're also allergic to horses.
The thing that happened in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 was genuinely a government cover-up, just not that one. It had nothing to do with aliens and everything to do with horny whales. I talked about this in my Fun Fact Friday newsletter last week, but it was too good not to share here as well. Every conspiracy theory is about rich and powerful people trying to keep something a secret, and then the only people who can see through it are your dumbest uncles on Facebook. But you don't need Facebook to understand this one. You need to understand how sound travels through water. How far a noise can travel has to do with temperature, pressure, and salinity. For complicated physics reasons that I definitely understand, but I'm choosing not to explain to you, there's a discrete layer deep in the ocean, and if you make a sound in that layer, it travels way farther than usual. Humans discovered this sound channel in the 1940s, but whales discovered it way earlier. Lonely fin whales regularly hang out at that level and sing their lonely fin whale songs so that they will reach more single fin whales in their area. Humans figured out if they dropped a bunch of microphones down to that level, they could spy on enemy submarines, received messages from downed pilots, and listen in on whale tinder. But the air also has discrete layers of temperature and pressure, and that could mean that there's a sound channel up there. So scientists put a bunch of microphones on balloons, and sure enough, they were able to spy on enemy aircraft, countries testing nuclear bombs, and horny sky whales. It's cool, but sinking microphones down to the deep ocean is much easier than getting them to stay up in the sky forever. So sometimes your elaborate microphone spy balloons crash. You don't want everyone to know about your cool new air and water spying system, and so the government lied. Personally, I think that story is more interesting and more likely than aliens building an interstellar spaceship and then somehow running out of gas over New Mexico. And if you agree, you should sign up for my newsletter. And if you disagree, I'm sure your uncle will let you subscribe to their Facebook posts. I love finding out something is named after a person I've never heard of. Like I thought the word was Latin and it turns out there was just a guy named John Pants. So here are 10 things you might not know are named after people. This segment has always been called 10 things. Pilates, the woo-woo exercise fad, was named after Joe Pilates. I mean, he was German, so his name was like Joseph Hubertus Pilates, but still, guys were named after Guy Fawkes. Guy was a boy's name before it was a general term, and then Guy Fawkes got extremely famous for something that he almost did, and then eventually they started calling anybody who dressed badly a guy, and then because that's most of us, it became a general term for guys. Fettuccine Alfredo was invented by a chef who came up with the idea for his pregnant wife, which makes sense because even a couple bites of that dish tastes like I'm eating for two. Bib lettuce does look like a little bib, but it was actually named after its inventor, John Bibb. Bing cherries were named after Mr. Bing. Boysenberries were named after Mr. Boysen. And a lot of people claim to have invented the margarita, but they always say they named it after a little Margaret. It's always a margarita, we just don't know which one. Cristiano Ronaldo was named after Ronald Reagan. And that tracks. I joked about John Pants and that's not real, but they are named after a person, just not a real person. There was a character in old Commedia dell'arte named Pantaloon, and instead of the normal trousers that have the two legs separate, his met in the middle at the top. And so that style of trouser became known as a pantaloon and then pants. And my favorite one, Apple Computers, named after the fruit, obviously named their main line of computers after the Macintosh Apple. And those were named after their discoverer, so the Apple Macintosh is named after John Macintosh.